curse of the Ward bloodline was never spoken of outside family walls. My father taught me that early. He used to lean down close, his voice low and steady, and say, "Terrence, the world doesn't need to know what we are. It wouldn't understand." I was 9, the first time my bones snapped and twisted under the pull of the full moon. By then, my parents had already reinforced the basement beneath our farmhouse in Amherst County, Virginia. Steel door, concrete walls, no windows. It was the only way they knew how to keep me from tearing the world apart while I learned to master the beast inside me. Those first years were a nightmare. I would wake with my hands and arms covered in bruises, sometimes bloodied from clawing at the walls. My ears rang with echoes of growls that didn't sound human, my throat sore from screaming that I didn't remember doing. My mother was always there afterward, cradling me against her shoulder. My father was colder, more practical, insisting I had to toughen up and accept what was in me. He wasn't wrong. By my late teens, I could change without losing my mind. I could control it, guide it, bend it. That was when the purpose of it all began to take shape. My father had been a hunter in his own right, but his prey was different from deer or bear. He never called them cryptids, but that is what people online call them now. He called them the things behind the veil. He would spend nights researching unsolved cases, hunters who never came back from the Blue Ridge, fishermen who vanished, leaving only blood on their boats, campers whose campsites were found shredded and empty. He always said the missing weren't lost, they were taken. By the time he died, I understood what he meant. The world has predators we don't speak about. Now I am 32, and I have carried his torch into something bigger. I don't hunt for trophies. I don't hunt for glory. I hunt because if I don't, someone's kid doesn't come home. Someone's wife never makes it back from a hike. Someone's husband gets torn apart in the dark while their family waits by the fire. The curse gave me teeth and claws, and I decided I would use them to kill what kills us. The only catch is the clock. I don't control when the moon rises or falls. One night each month, sometimes 2, is all I get. That means I spend the rest of my time digging through news reports, message boards, police logs, and the back corners of missing persons databases. I cross-reference, highlight patterns, mark areas on maps. By the time the full moon comes, I know exactly where I will be and what I will be hunting. This time, everything led me to the George Washington National Forest, stretching across western Virginia like a black ocean of trees. Locals whispered about guttural howls echoing through the hollows. 2 hikers had been found ripped open, as if mauled by something with hands instead of paws. Their bones had been crushed, not chewed. Sheriff's deputies blamed bears. I knew better. Everything pointed to dogmen. Dogmen aren't like me. They don't hide their curse. They don't struggle with conscience. They don't balance humanity with the beast. They are the beast. Bigger than wolves, broader across the shoulders, with eyes that burn yellow and a stench like rot. When they move on 2 legs and 4, whichever suits them best. I had only fought one before, and I nearly died. But I came out alive, which was more than could be said for it. The forest swallowed me whole as twilight sank into night. The air was damp, heavy with the scent of pine and earth. My pack was loaded with water, rope, and the weapons I preferred in human form, a silver-plated hunting knife, not because I needed it, but because I had learned dogmen had a weakness to it, and a short-barreled shotgun with solid slugs. I wouldn't be able to carry them once the change came, but the weapons kept me alive in those dangerous minutes before the moon took me. Plan was simple: hike deep into the quadrant where most of the disappearances had been reported, wait for the moon, then hunt. My senses would sharpen, the beast would take over, and I would find the thing that had been killing people. I hadn't expected to run into anyone else out there. The crunch of boots on the trail behind me made me pause. I turned and saw him, a tall guy, maybe late 20s, carrying a trekking pole and a small pack. His face was sunburned, and he had that look of somebody who thought they belonged in the wild because they had read about it on forums. "You headed up toward Bald Knob?" he asked, pointing up the ridgeline. I kept my voice steady. "You shouldn't be out here tonight. You need to turn back." He frowned, gave a half laugh. "What are you, a ranger?" "I've been planning this hike for months. The stories people tell around here are just campfire garbage." I stepped closer, lowering my voice. The seconds were ticking in my head. I knew the moon would break the tree line soon. "I'm serious. You need to go, right now. You don't want to be here after dark." His smirk told me he wasn't listening. "Man, I didn't drive 4 hours just to turn around because some stranger says so. It's a forest. There's nothing here but trees and maybe a bear or two." I wanted to grab him and drag him down the trail myself, but there wasn't time. My skin prickled. I could already feel the pull in my blood, the tightening in my muscles, the beast stretching inside me. I had minutes, maybe less. I tried one last time. "Listen, if you stay out here, you're not going to make it back. Leave, now." He shook his head, annoyed. "You're nuts." That was when the forest erupted. Something huge crashed through the brush, moving faster than anything should. Branches snapped like bones breaking, and before either of us could react, a shape exploded out of the shadows. The dogman. It hit us like a wrecking ball, a wall of fur, teeth, and muscle. I felt claws rake across my shoulder as we went flying. The hiker's scream cut off when his head struck a tree, his body crumpling into the dirt. I rolled, tasting blood in my mouth, and came face to face with the nightmare I had been hunting. 7 feet tall, hunched, its muzzle wet with saliva, its breath steaming in the night. It loomed over me, jaws opening wide, ready to crush my skull. The moon broke through the trees. My time was up. Bones shattered, skin tore, fire ripped through my veins. I roared as the change ripped me apart, muscle swelling, claws bursting from my fingers. My face pushed forward into a snout, eyes burning yellow as the beast inside me took form. And I met the dogman head-on. The world exploded in a blur of fury and blood. The dogman lunged at me with a guttural snarl, its claws tearing through bark as it slammed me against the ground. My bones were still finishing their reshaping, my muscles still stretching into their full form, but adrenaline and rage surged through me. I met its jaws with mine, snapping upward, and the forest rang with the sound of teeth clashing like blades. We tumbled across the trail, ripping dirt and leaves into the air. My claws raked across its chest, hot blood spraying across my face. It didn't slow it down. If anything, the wound seemed to fuel it. The dogman's yellow eyes blazed, and it drove its knee into my ribs with crushing force. I felt bones splinter, pain cutting through me like fire, but the beast inside me didn't let me falter. Pain was nothing. Pain was fuel. The hiker groaned nearby, staggering up to his knees. His eyes widened, his mind trying to make sense of what he was seeing. A nightmare brawl, fur and fangs tearing into one another, monsters born of myth made real. He screamed, stumbling back, but his scream caught the dogman's ear. It twisted its head, that gaze locking on him, prey. The dogman launched off me in one fluid motion, bounding across the dirt. The hiker had no chance. It caught him by the leg, claws punching deep into his thigh, and dragged him across the ground like a rag doll. His fists clawed at the dirt, mouth wide with terror as he was pulled toward the tree line. I roared and gave chase. Every stride felt like thunder through the forest floor, branches snapping against my shoulders. The dogman hauled the hiker into the brush, but before it could disappear, I slammed into it with all the force I had. The three of us went sprawling, the hiker screaming as I tore him from the dogman's grasp and flung him clear. "Run!" I barked, my voice a guttural snarl, words half drowned in the beast's growl. His eyes met mine, disbelief written across his pale face. But something in my tone, or maybe the raw terror in the air, struck him. He staggered upright, clutching his bleeding leg, and limped away into the dark, crashing through the undergrowth as fast as his body would carry him. The dogman was already back on me. Its claws ripped into my back, dragging me down into the dirt. Its jaws clamped down on my shoulder, hot agony flooding through me as teeth scraped bone. I slammed my elbow into its muzzle again and again, feeling cartilage crunch under the blows. With a violent twist, I threw it off me, both of us skidding across the forest floor. The night was alive with our roars. Every sound was primal. Every movement carried the weight of killing intent. This wasn't a scuffle. This wasn't defense. This was predator against predator, each of us locked in a war to the death. We circled one another in the moonlight, hackles raised, steam rising off our blood-soaked bodies. My breath came heavy, chest heaving. I could smell the copper tang of my own blood, the stench of its matted fur, the dirt, thick with the sweat of battle. Then it lunged again. The dogman's claws flashed like knives, and I ducked low, sweeping its legs out from under it. The ground shook as it crashed down, but it rolled, coming back up on all fours, shoulders heaving. We crashed together again, teeth sinking into fur, claws ripping into hide. I felt its blood pumping against my tongue, bitter and hot, and I tore away with a chunk of flesh in my mouth. It screamed, a sound that rattled the leaves overhead. The dogman clawed at my throat, ripping fur and skin, but I slammed my fist into its skull, knocking it sideways. I pounced, driving it into the dirt, my jaws seeking its throat. For a moment, I thought I had it. My teeth grazed its jugular, but it twisted with inhuman speed, shoving me off with a strength that sent me crashing into a tree. The trunk splintered under the impact, bark exploding around me. I dropped to my knees, shaking my head clear. By the time I looked up, the dogman was gone. The forest fell into silence. My ears twitched, searching for sound. My nose worked the air, pulling in scents. Sweat, blood, pine. But underneath it all, I caught the faint musk of the dogman, that rank, unnatural stench. It wasn't gone. It was watching. I stepped into the brush, each movement calculated. My claws flexed, blood dripping from my knuckles. I knew this game. The dogman was circling, waiting for the moment my guard slipped. The hiker had disappeared, hopefully following the trail back out of the woods. At least one life had been spared. Now, it was just me and the monster I came here to kill. The moonlight carved silver lines across the forest floor. My vision pierced the dark, as if it were daylight, every detail sharp. I could hear water dripping from leaves, the skitter of mice in the undergrowth, the beating of wings from an owl overhead. But beyond those, silence. Too much silence. Then I felt it. The hairs on my neck rose. My gut tightened. The dogman was near. I pivoted just as it burst from the brush. Its claws slashed from my face, but I ducked, countering with a swipe of my own. Flesh tore. Blood splashed. It howled, but its other arm hooked me around the waist, yanking me off balance. I slammed my head forward, skull cracking into its snout, and the two of us went rolling through the leaves once more. The fight dragged on, every second an eternity. My muscles burned, lungs seared, but I didn't stop. I couldn't. This was the hunt I had chosen, the life I had claimed. I was born for this war, forged in it. The dogman shoved me back, chest heaving, blood pouring from its wounds. I mirrored it, crouched low, ready to strike again. Neither of us was finished. Not yet. The forest had gone deathly still, as if even the wind didn't want to intrude on what was about to happen. I crouched low, blood dripping into the leaves, breath steaming like smoke. Across from me, the dogman's chest heaved, its rib cage shuddering, yellow eyes locked on mine. We were both bleeding, both battered, yet neither of us had yielded. This was it, the last stretch, and only one of us would walk away. It growled, deep and guttural, the sound vibrating through the soil itself. I bared my teeth in answer, a rumble building in my chest until it erupted into a roar that shook the branches above. The dogman lunged. The impact was like colliding with a falling tree. Its claws raked across my chest, ripping fur and skin, but I grabbed hold of its arm and twisted. Bones cracked, its howl splitting the night. It swung with the other hand, claws glancing across my jaw, spraying blood. I clamped down on its forearm with my teeth, tearing muscle, feeling the tendon snap like rope beneath my jaws. The dogman thrashed, slamming its skull into mine. The world went white with the force of it, but I held on, snarling, until it threw us both sideways into a fallen log. The wood shattered around us, insects and rot bursting free. We rolled in the dirt, a whirlwind of claws and teeth, until I shoved it back and staggered to my feet. The air reeked of blood and sweat. My ears rang with the echo of our battle, the pounding rhythm of my own heart. The dogman circled, foam dripping from its muzzle. Every movement was desperate now. It knew it was close to death, and that made it even more dangerous. It leapt again, trying to barrel me down. I sidestepped at the last second, sinking my claws into its side and ripping downward. Flesh parted, ribs gleamed white in the moonlight, and its howl rattled the night sky. It spun, swiping at me, and one claw caught me across the thigh. Fire seared through my leg and I dropped to one knee, snarling. The dogman pounced, sensing weakness. It slammed me to the ground, its jaws snapping inches from my throat. Hot spit hit my face as it pushed down, strength crushing me into the soil. My claws scrabbled against its hide, ripping chunks of fur, but it drove its weight harder, closer, its teeth grazing my neck. With a roar that tore my throat raw, I brought my knee up into its stomach, driving with everything I had left. It reeled, just enough for me to twist free. I surged upward, claws flashing, and raked both hands across its face. One eye burst under the blow, black ichor spilling out. It screamed, blinded on one side, staggering back into the trees. I didn't let up. I charged, tackling it, driving us both through the undergrowth. We slammed against a rock outcropping, stone cracking under the force. The dogman lashed out, claws scoring my back, but I ignored the pain, jaws wide, teeth bared. I sank them into its throat. The taste of its blood flooded my mouth, bitter, thick, almost rancid. It thrashed, claws gouging my shoulders, but I clamped harder, shaking my head like a wolf tearing into prey. Flesh tore, sinew snapped, its howls turning to a gurgle. With one final wrench, its throat gave way. The dogman collapsed, twitching, blood pouring out in a dark river across the stones. Clawed weakly at the earth, eyes dimming, the fire fading. I stood over it, chest heaving, fur soaked crimson. For a long moment, I simply stared down at the body. Another monster down. Another predator silenced. The forest slowly came alive again, as though it knew the battle was over. Leaves rustled with the breeze, an owl called distantly, and somewhere water trickled through the rocks. I let out a long, low breath, the adrenaline finally easing, though every muscle still screamed with pain. I turned my head toward the trail where I had left the hiker. With any luck, he had listened and run far enough to survive. His blood had been on the ground, but shallow wounds didn't always mean death. Maybe he would stagger his way back to safety. Maybe he would tell a story nobody believed. It didn't matter. I hadn't been there to protect him from the truth. I had been there to kill what hunted him. I crouched over the dogman's corpse, staring at its ruined throat, its lifeless eyes staring into nothing. This was why I hunted. This was why my curse existed. To face things no one else could, to bleed so that others didn't have to. The moon hung high overhead, light spilling like silver fire through the branches. My time was slipping. Soon the beast inside me would recede, leaving me human again, broken and battered but alive. I couldn't be caught out here beside the body. Questions would follow, and I had no answers that would satisfy. I dragged the carcass deeper into the forest, into a ravine where scavengers in time would erase its existence. The weight was immense, but in this form, my strength made it possible. When the job was done, I stood at the edge of the ravine, staring down into the dark where it lay. One less killer in the woods of Virginia. I limped back toward the trail, each step slower as the burn of transformation began to fade. My body shrank, fur retreating, claws receding into bloody hands. The pain of shifting back hit like molten iron poured through my veins. I dropped to my knees, gasping, naked skin steaming in the cold night air. By the time it ended, I was human again, covered in blood that wasn't all mine, my breath ragged, my muscles trembling. Dawn was still hours away, but the forest already felt different. Lighter, as if some shadow had been lifted. I pulled myself to my feet and shouldered my pack, retrieving the knife and shotgun I had left behind before the change. They felt heavier now, my human strength a fraction of what it had been minutes ago. I hobbled down the trail, my thoughts heavy. The DOGMEN was dead, but there would be more. There were always more. Every town had its stories, every county its unsolved cases, every forest its shadows. I had chosen this path, chosen to use the curse, not for destruction, but for vengeance. Not vengeance for myself, but for the forgotten, for the missing, for the people whose names had faded from headlines and whose families still waited by empty doors. That was the mission. That was my life. I paused once, glancing back into the trees. Somewhere behind me, the hiker might still be stumbling out, alive but changed forever. Maybe he would tell his children one day about the night he saw monsters in the Virginia woods. Maybe he would bury it deep, trying to forget. Either way, he lived, and that was enough. I turned forward again and walked on, the forest silent around me, the moon beginning its slow descent. Another hunt finished, another beast slain, but deep inside, I knew this was only one victory in a war without end. Because next month, when the full moon rose again, I would be out here once more, hunting the things that hunt us. If you enjoyed this video, please don't forget to like and subscribe to Descent into the Unknown for more horror content. If you have any real cryptid encounters, or you're a horror writer wanting to share your stories, please feel free to email me in the description anytime.